At my sister-in-law Sarah's inauguration party celebrating her appointment as CEO of Hartwell Industries, I stood among the champagne-wielding crowd in our corporate headquarters' top floor. Before I could even raise my glass to toast her success, Sarah approached with ice-cold eyes and declared, "You're fired. Security will escort you out immediately." The room fell silent. I calmly placed my guest badge on the marble table, smiled, and replied, "Tell Mom and Dad the emergency board meeting convenes in 2 hours. They'll want to hear about this decision." The elevator doors closed behind me with a soft chime, and I found myself alone for the first time since Sarah's bombshell announcement. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. 5 years of marriage to David Hartwell had taught me that his family's dynamics could shift like quicksand, but I never expected this level of betrayal. I met David during our final semester at Northwestern University. He was the quiet guy in my business ethics class who always sat in the back row, asking thoughtful questions about corporate responsibility. I was drawn to his genuine curiosity about making business more humane. We spent countless hours in coffee shops discussing how companies could serve their communities instead of just extracting profit from them. When David first brought me home to meet his parents, Margaret and Robert Hartwell, I was terrified. Hartwell Industries wasn't just any company. They'd built it from a small manufacturing operation in the 1970s into a multi-million-dollar enterprise specializing in sustainable packaging solutions. The Hartwell name carried weight in Chicago business circles. But Margaret welcomed me with warm hugs and homemade apple pie. Robert spent an entire afternoon showing me around their original factory floor, explaining every process with the pride of someone who'd built something meaningful with his own hands. They weren't the cold corporate elites I'd expected. They were genuine people who'd worked hard and treated their employees like extended family. After our wedding, I started as a marketing coordinator at Hartwell Industries. I could have taken a position elsewhere, but I wanted to earn my place in this family business. I worked late nights, arrived early, and learned every department's function. I listened to employees' concerns and developed relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchy. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted to marketing manager. By year 3, I was director of operations. Last year, they made me vice president. Each promotion came with increased responsibilities and the trust of people who'd initially been skeptical of the boss's new daughter-in-law. Sarah, meanwhile, had been absent for 8 years. After college, she'd moved to London to work for various financial firms. She sent Christmas cards and occasionally called during family gatherings, but she showed no interest in the family business. Her conversations always centered around her sophisticated European lifestyle and her disdain for provincial American corporate culture. 6 months ago, everything changed. Margaret and Robert announced their intention to semi-retire and transition daily operations to the next generation. David had made it clear years earlier that he preferred his environmental law practice to corporate management. The logical succession plan pointed toward grooming me for increased leadership responsibility. That's when Sarah suddenly returned from London. She arrived with expensive luggage, designer clothes, and an aggressive campaign to position herself as the rightful heir to Hartwell Industries. Board meetings that had once been collaborative discussions became tense confrontations. Sarah questioned every decision I'd made, criticized my lack of family connection, and suggested that my outsider perspective couldn't truly understand the company's legacy. She systematically began undermining my relationships with key employees. She'd schedule private meetings with department heads, subtly questioning my competence and suggesting that family leadership would bring stability. She criticized projects I'd initiated, calling them amateur attempts at innovation and risky departures from proven methods. The worst part was watching Margaret and Robert struggle with their daughter's return. They wanted to believe Sarah had matured during her years abroad and was genuinely committed to the family business. When she presented polished PowerPoint presentations about modernizing operations and leveraging global market opportunities, they listened with the hopeful expressions of parents who wanted to see their child succeed. But I noticed things Sarah thought no one would catch. Phone calls that ended abruptly when someone entered the room, private meetings with people I didn't recognize, financial reports that didn't match the data I'd been tracking. Small inconsistencies that painted a troubling picture. Yesterday's devastating revelation came during what I thought was a routine family dinner. Sarah had convinced Margaret and Robert that family blood should control the family business. They'd made the painful decision to remove me from executive leadership and install Sarah as CEO. David had tried to defend me, but his parents' minds were made up. As I drove home from tonight's inauguration disaster, my phone rang. James Morrison, the family attorney who'd handled legal matters for Hartwell Industries for over 20 years, spoke with barely contained excitement. "Kristen, there's something Sarah doesn't know. Something that's going to change everything about tonight's drama." "What do you mean, James?" "Over the past 3 years, Margaret and Robert have been quietly transferring company shares to you as performance bonuses. You now own 49% of Hartwell Industries. You're the second largest shareholder in the company." The road ahead blurred as the implications hit me. Sarah had just fired the person who owned nearly half the company she thought she now controlled. David was frantically stuffing clothes into a suitcase when I walked through our front door. His usually calm demeanor had cracked, and he looked up at me with a mixture of relief and panic. "Thank God you're home. My parents called an emergency family meeting. They want everyone at the law offices in 90 minutes. He paused, studying my face. "You don't look upset about getting fired." I sat on our bed and took his hands in mine. "David, there's something you need to know. James Morrison just told me about the share transfers." His shoulders sagged with obvious relief. "You found out. I've been dying keeping that secret for months." "You knew?" "Mom and Dad swore me to secrecy. They've been testing both you and Sarah for the past year, watching how you each handle pressure and responsibility. Tonight was never about them choosing Sarah over you. It was about seeing what Sarah would do when she thought she held all the power." The pieces began falling into place. The inauguration party was a setup, a test of character. They wanted to see if Sarah would treat you with respect when she felt secure in her position, or if she'd reveal her true nature. David's expression darkened. "Based on what happened tonight, I think they got their answer." "There's more you don't know," I said, and told him about James Morrison's call. David's eyes widened. 49%? That makes you the most powerful individual shareholder besides Mom and Dad. My phone buzzed with incoming calls. First, it was Linda Rodriguez from our packaging design team. "Kristen, I just heard what happened at the party. This is insane. Sarah can't fire you. You're the best thing that's happened to this company in decades." Then came Marcus Chen from production management. "The whole floor is talking about tonight. People are furious. Half the department is threatening to walk if you're really gone." Call after call poured in. Employees expressing outrage, major clients demanding explanations, suppliers concerned about contract stability. Sarah's decisive action had triggered exactly the opposite reaction she'd expected. David answered his phone and his face went white. "Mom, slow down. What do you mean she's already started laying people off?" I grabbed his arm. "Who's being laid off?" "Sarah fired 12 people tonight, all long-term employees, people with families who've been loyal to the company for years." David listened for another minute, then hung up. "Mom's crying. She says this isn't what they wanted." My laptop showed 17 new emails from Sarah, sent within the past hour. She'd already begun implementing drastic changes, cost-cutting measures that would devastate employee morale. Elimination of the annual profit-sharing program. Cancellation of the company's scholarship fund for employees' children. Margaret called me directly at 11:15. Her voice was thick with tears and regret. "Kristen, honey, I need to apologize. Tonight was supposed to be a controlled test, but it's spiraled completely out of control. Sarah's actions are breaking my heart. We never intended for her to start making these kinds of decisions immediately." "Margaret, what exactly did you and Robert hope would happen?" "We wanted to see if Sarah had grown into the kind of person who could lead with compassion and wisdom. We hoped she'd recognize your value and want to work with you as a team. Instead, she's showing us exactly who she's become, and it's not the daughter we raised." "What about the emergency board meeting?" "We scheduled it weeks ago. Tonight was always going to end with us discussing the company's real future. James Morrison has prepared some documents that we think will interest you greatly." David was monitoring news alerts on his phone. Sarah's already leaked her appointment to business journalists. There are 3 articles online calling tonight a bold changing of the guard at Hartwell Industries. But as I scrolled through social media, I could see the real story emerging. Current and former employees were posting about Sarah's layoffs. Clients were expressing concerns about sudden leadership changes. The narrative Sarah wanted to control was slipping through her fingers. Then David dropped a bombshell that made my blood run cold. "Kristen, there's something else Mom and Dad discovered that Sarah doesn't know they know. She's been embezzling money from our European operations for the past 2 years. Small amounts at first, but it's escalated. The quarterly audit that was scheduled for tomorrow would have exposed everything. That's why she fired me tonight." "Exactly. She needed you out before the audit revealed the discrepancies. But what Sarah doesn't realize is that Mom and Dad have been aware of the theft for weeks. They hired a private investigator to document everything. They wanted to see if she'd confess and try to make things right, or if she'd double down on the deception. And tonight gave them their answer. She chose to double down. But now she's trapped herself. The evidence is overwhelming, and her decision to fire you tonight shows she has no intention of coming clean about anything." As we drove toward downtown Chicago, I realized that Sarah had unwittingly set herself up for the most spectacular fall in Hartwell Industries' history. She thought she was consolidating power, but she'd actually just provided the final proof that she was unfit to lead anything more complex than her own destruction. The law offices of Morrison and Associates occupied the 32nd floor of a downtown Chicago high-rise. At 11:30 on a Tuesday night, the building was nearly empty, except for our family drama playing out in the mahogany-paneled conference room. Sarah had arrived ahead of us, flanked by 3 lawyers from Preston, Hamilton, and Burke, one of Chicago's most prestigious corporate law firms. She'd changed from her inauguration party dress into a sharp business suit that screamed authority. Her confidence filled the room like expensive perfume. The board of directors for Hartwell Industries consisted of Margaret and Robert, who together controlled 51% of company shares, plus 3 independent directors. Dr. Patricia Williams, former dean of Northwestern's Business School, Michael Torres, retired CEO of a major logistics company, and Jennifer Kim, a corporate governance expert. All 3 had worked with the company for over a decade and knew its operations intimately. James Morrison sat at the head of the conference table with several thick folders arranged in front of him. His normally calm demeanor carried an undercurrent of anticipation that made me wonder exactly what evidence he'd compiled. Sarah launched into her presentation before anyone else could speak. "I appreciate everyone gathering tonight, though I should point out that this meeting seems unnecessary. The transition of leadership has already been completed successfully." She activated her laptop and projected a polished PowerPoint presentation onto the wall screen. Hartwell Industries faces significant challenges in today's competitive marketplace. We need aggressive modernization to survive the next decade. Her slides outlined a comprehensive restructuring plan. Elimination of 40% of current staff, closure of 2 production facilities, liquidation of underperforming divisions, and termination of what she called wasteful community investment programs. These changes will increase profit margins by 35% within 18 months, Sarah continued, clicking to financial projections that looked impressive until you realized they were built on destroying everything the company had stood for. Dr. Williams raised her hand. Sarah, these projections assume that our major clients will maintain their contracts despite the service disruptions these changes would cause. Do you have assurances from our client base? Modern clients care about efficiency and cost-effectiveness, not emotional attachments to employees, Sarah replied dismissively. Michael Torres leaned forward. What about employee retention during this transition? Our institutional knowledge walks out the door with these layoffs. Inefficient employees can be replaced with better talent. We're not running a charity. Jennifer Kim asked the question that cut to the heart of the matter. Sarah, how do these changes align with the company values your parents built this business on? Sarah's expression hardened. Sentimental attachment to outdated business practices is exactly why American companies lose ground to international competitors. Family blood should control family business, and that means making hard decisions that outsiders might find uncomfortable. Her lawyers nodded approvingly as Sarah presented doctored financial reports that painted my departments as money-losing operations. She'd manipulated the data cleverly, shifting overhead costs and removing revenue attribution to make my work appear ineffective. Margaret and Robert exchanged glances that I couldn't interpret. Were they actually considering Sarah's arguments? Kristen, Robert said finally, Sarah has raised concerns about your performance. Would you like to respond to her presentation? This was my moment. I stood and faced the board with the confidence of someone who knew her work spoke for itself. Over the past 3 years, my departments have increased revenue by 42% while improving employee satisfaction scores across all metrics. Client retention, in accounts I personally manage, stands at 97%, compared to the industry average of 78%. I presented real financial data, unmanipulated and transparent. Client testimonials that praised the company's integrity and reliability. Employee satisfaction surveys that showed why talented people chose to stay at Hartwell Industries instead of jumping to competitors offering higher salaries. Sarah's projections assume that relationships don't matter in business, but our clients choose us because they trust us. Our employees give their best effort because they know we value them as people, not just production units. Sarah's lawyers whispered among themselves as I systematically dismantled her arguments with actual facts instead of manipulated projections. Furthermore, I continued, I've been documenting concerning irregularities in our European operations that require immediate board attention. Sarah's face went pale. What kind of irregularities? I looked directly into her eyes. Financial discrepancies that suggest possible fraud or embezzlement. I was planning to present my findings after tomorrow's quarterly audit. That's a serious accusation, one of her lawyers interrupted. Yes, it is. Which is why I've been careful to gather substantial evidence before bringing it to the board's attention. Sarah's composure was cracking. This is exactly the kind of amateur investigation that proves Kristen lacks the sophisticated understanding necessary for executive leadership. Actually, James Morrison said, opening one of his thick folders, we've been conducting our own investigation into these irregularities, and our findings are quite comprehensive. The room fell silent, as Morrison began distributing documents to each board member. Bank records, wire transfer receipts, email correspondences, a paper trail that painted a clear picture of systematic theft. Sarah's confidence evaporated as she realized what Morrison was presenting. Her lawyers began reviewing the documents with increasingly concerned expressions. Dr. Williams looked up from the bank records. "Sarah, these transfers from the London office to your personal accounts total over $200,000 over the past 18 months. Those were legitimate consultant fees for market analysis," Sarah said. But her voice lacked conviction. "Consultant fees require contracts and deliverables," Jennifer Kim replied. "I don't see any documentation supporting these payments." Michael Torres held up a wire transfer receipt. "This $10,000 transfer occurred 3 days after a major client payment to our European accounts. The timing suggests direct diversion of client funds." Sarah's lawyers were frantically whispering among themselves. The lead attorney cleared his throat. "We need a moment to consult with our client privately." "Actually," Morrison said with a slight smile, "there's one more document that might interest everyone." He pulled out a contract bearing Sarah's signature. "This is an agreement Sarah signed last week with Consolidated Packaging Solutions, our primary competitor. She's agreed to provide them with our proprietary manufacturing processes, client lists, and strategic plans in exchange for a personal payment of $500,000. The room exploded. Margaret gasped audibly. Robert's face turned red with rage. The independent directors stared at Sarah in disbelief. "That constitutes corporate espionage and breach of fiduciary duty," Dr. Williams said. "This is a federal crime." Sarah's lawyers were already standing to leave. "We cannot continue to represent Miss Hartwell in this matter." But Sarah wasn't finished fighting. She turned toward her parents with desperate fury. "You set me up. This was all a trap to humiliate me and protect your precious daughter-in-law. We gave you every opportunity to prove yourself worthy of leading this company," Margaret said quietly. "Instead, you've proven exactly the opposite." As Sarah's lawyers gathered their papers and headed for the exit, I realized that her greed and arrogance had destroyed not just her career, but any remaining relationship with her family. She'd turned a business succession into a criminal conspiracy, and the night was far from over. Sarah's lawyers had abandoned her, leaving her alone to face the mounting evidence of her crimes. But instead of showing remorse or attempting to explain her actions, she doubled down with the desperation of someone who had nothing left to lose. "You want to know how I influenced those clients so quickly?" she shouted at the remaining board members. "I didn't. They're lying to protect their financial interests." Kristen probably promised them better contract terms or threatened to terminate their agreements. Dr. Williams shook her head sadly. "Sarah, we called those clients ourselves. Their responses were immediate and unequivocal. They trust Kristen's leadership and integrity, because she's manipulated them the same way she's manipulated all of you." I remained calm, letting Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior speak for itself. "The relationships I've built with clients are based on 5 years of consistent service and honest communication. Tonight's client responses reflect their confidence in our company's values, not any manipulation." Michael Torres had been reviewing additional documents Morrison had provided. "Sarah, we also have testimonials from employees across every department. They describe Kristen's leadership style as collaborative, fair, and focused on both company success and employee well-being." "Of course they support her," Sarah snapped. "She's created a culture of mediocrity where nobody has to work hard because everyone gets participation trophies." Jennifer Kim looked up from her tablet. "The productivity metrics contradict that characterization. Under Kristen's leadership, efficiency has improved while employee turnover has decreased significantly." Morrison opened another folder. The independent directors commissioned their own investigation into recent company operations. Dr. Williams, would you share your findings? Dr. Williams adjusted her reading glasses. We've been concerned about some irregularities that have emerged since Sarah's return 6 months ago. Working with forensic accountants, we've traced a pattern of financial manipulation in our European operations. She projected a spreadsheet onto the wall screen. These transfers from our London subsidiary to offshore accounts coincide exactly with Sarah's access to those systems. The amounts start small, but escalate significantly over time. Sarah's panic was becoming visible. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the conference room's cool temperature. Those transfers were authorized business expenses. Authorized by whom? Morrison asked. There are no corresponding approvals in company records. I had authority to manage European operations. You had consultative access, Robert said firmly. You never had authorization to move funds without board approval. Jennifer Kim pulled up bank records on her tablet. Sarah, this $50,000 transfer occurred the same day our largest European client made a major payment. The funds went directly from their payment to your personal account in the Cayman Islands. That's impossible. I don't have accounts in the Cayman Islands. Morrison slid another document across the table, bank signature cards bearing your name and signature, along with transfer authorizations in your handwriting. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of Sarah's deception. She hadn't just stolen money. She'd created an elaborate international scheme to hide her theft. Margaret broke the silence with a voice full of heartbreak. Sarah, how could you betray our family and our employees like this? I didn't betray anyone. I've been trying to save this company from irrelevance while you've been letting an outsider destroy everything we built. An outsider? David finally exploded. Kristen has spent 5 years earning the respect of every person in this company. She's worked harder than anyone to preserve what Mom and Dad created. She's not family. Neither are our employees, but we treat them like family because that's what decent people do, Robert said. You've forgotten the values we raised you with. Dr. Williams presented the final piece of evidence. Sarah, we also discovered communications between you and executives at Consolidated Packaging. You've been providing them with our strategic plans and client information. That's corporate espionage, Michael Torres added. It's not just theft. It's betrayal of our competitive position. Sarah looked around the room, seeing only hostile faces staring back at her. Her elaborate scheme had unraveled completely, and everyone could see exactly what kind of person she'd become. Fine, she said with vicious desperation. You want to destroy me? I'll destroy this company's reputation. I'll go to every business journalist in Chicago and tell them how the Hartwell family treats their own daughter. Actually, Morrison said calmly, you won't. He nodded toward the conference room door, where 2 FBI agents had quietly entered along with Chicago police officers. Special Agent Rodriguez stepped forward. Sarah Hartwell, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage. The handcuffs clicked around Sarah's wrists as Agent Rodriguez read her Miranda rights. The sound echoed in the stunned conference room like a final judgment. The Bureau has been investigating Consolidated Packaging's suspicious acquisition of proprietary information from multiple companies, Agent Rodriguez explained to the board. Your cooperation with our investigation led us directly to Miss Hartwell's activities. Sarah stared at her parents with pure hatred. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Your perfect daughter-in-law gets everything while your real daughter goes to prison. Margaret was crying openly. We wanted you to be the person we raised you to be. Instead, you chose to become someone we don't recognize. As the officers escorted Sarah from the conference room, she screamed over her shoulder, You'll regret this. All of you. The door closed behind her with finality that seemed to echo through the building's empty corridors. Dr. Williams broke the stunned silence. I move that the board vote immediately on new leadership for Hartwell Industries. Seconded, said Michael Torres. Jennifer Kim looked at me with respect and determination. Kristen, are you prepared to accept the position of Chief Executive Officer? I looked around the table at Margaret and Robert, who were nodding through their tears. At David, who squeezed my hand with pride. At the independent directors who had seen through Sarah's deceptions from the beginning. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The vote was unanimous. The next 6 months transformed Hartwell Industries in ways that exceeded everyone's expectations. As I stood in my new office on a bright Tuesday morning in April, looking out at the factory floor where employees moved with purpose and energy, I could hardly believe how much had changed since that devastating night when Sarah tried to destroy everything we'd built together. My first action, as CEO, had been to reinstate every employee Sarah fired during her brief reign of terror. But I didn't stop there. Each of those 12 loyal workers received a personal apology, full compensation for their distress, and a guarantee that such arbitrary treatment would never happen again under my leadership. Linda Rodriguez knocked on my office door. She'd been promoted to Director of Innovation, leading a team that developed sustainable packaging solutions for environmentally conscious clients. Kristen, the quarterly reports are ready for your review. The numbers told an incredible story. Revenue had increased by 38%. Employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. Client retention stood at 99%, with new businesses actively seeking partnerships with Hartwell Industries. The profit-sharing program is exceeding all projections, Linda continued. Employees are more invested in company success than ever before. I'd implemented the profit-sharing plan as soon as the board approved our new corporate governance policies. Every employee, from entry-level positions to senior management, received quarterly bonuses based on company performance. The result was a workforce that treated the business like their own, because in many ways it was. Marcus Chen had been promoted to Vice President of Operations. His manufacturing efficiency improvements were saving the company hundreds of thousands of dollars annually while improving working conditions throughout the facility. The safety record is remarkable, he reported during our weekly leadership meeting. 0 accidents for 123 consecutive days. Dr. Williams had agreed to serve as chairman of the board, bringing academic rigor to our strategic planning. The Harvard Business Review wants to feature Hartwell Industries in their upcoming issue about ethical leadership, she announced. You're becoming a case study in how companies can succeed financially while prioritizing employee welfare. The media attention had been overwhelmingly positive. Business journals praised our revolutionary approach to corporate governance. Industry publications highlighted our employee retention rates and client satisfaction scores. 3 major universities had contacted me about guest lecturing on ethical business practices. Margaret and Robert had found genuine peace in their retirement. They spent their days traveling, volunteering for local charities, and watching their grandchildren grow. But they also remained active board members, offering wisdom and support whenever I needed guidance. We're so proud of the leader you've become, Margaret told me during one of our monthly family dinners. You've exceeded every hope we had for this company's future. Robert nodded enthusiastically. The employees respect you because you've earned it through consistent fairness and genuine care for their well-being. David had joined the company board while maintaining his environmental law practice. His legal expertise proved invaluable as we navigated new regulations and compliance requirements. The synergy between your leadership and my environmental focus is creating opportunities we never anticipated, he said. We'd landed 3 major contracts with companies seeking environmentally responsible packaging solutions. David's legal knowledge, combined with my operational experience, had positioned Hartwell Industries as a leader in sustainable business practices. The company's reputation for integrity had opened doors that pure profit-seeking never could. Clients trusted us with their most sensitive projects because they knew we'd never compromise their interests for short-term gains. Jennifer Kim had become our chief ethics officer, establishing policies that prevented the kind of abuse Sarah had attempted. "The whistleblower program is working beautifully," she reported. "Employees feel comfortable reporting concerns because they know they'll be heard and protected." Michael Torres had assumed leadership of our strategic planning committee. His experience guided our expansion into new markets while maintaining the values-based approach that had become our signature. "2 international firms have approached us about partnerships," he announced. "They want access to our ethical business model." But the most satisfying change was the transformation in company culture. Employees who had once worked with quiet resignation now contributed ideas, took initiative, and collaborated across departments with enthusiasm I'd never seen before. The scholarship fund we'd established for employees' children had its first recipients. 5 bright students heading to college with full tuition support. Their parents' pride during the awards ceremony reminded me why we were in business in the first place. Meanwhile, Sarah's legal troubles had intensified. The FBI investigation had expanded to include multiple companies in what prosecutors called one of the largest corporate espionage networks in recent Chicago history. Her cooperation with investigators had reduced her sentence, but she still faced 3 years in federal prison plus full restitution of stolen funds. The competitor company that had participated in Sarah's scheme faced massive fines and criminal charges against several executives. Their stock price collapsed, and 2 major clients had terminated contracts due to the ethical violations. Sarah's attempt to destroy Hartwell Industries had ultimately destroyed the company she'd tried to serve. Local business schools began using Sarah's case as a cautionary tale about the consequences of prioritizing greed over integrity. Her name had become synonymous with corporate betrayal and family destruction. But as I watched our employees preparing for the annual company picnic, I realized that Sarah's attempted sabotage had actually strengthened us. The crisis had forced us to examine our values, clarify our mission, and commit to principles that made us stronger than before. The FBI had contacted me one final time to confirm that all stolen funds had been recovered and returned to company accounts. Special Agent Rodriguez seemed genuinely pleased with the outcome. "Cases like this usually end with destroyed companies and devastated families," she said. "Your family's response turned a potential tragedy into a story of resilience and growth." As I prepared for the board meeting where we'd announce our best quarterly performance in company history, I understood that leadership wasn't about power or control. It was about serving something larger than yourself and earning the trust of people who chose to follow your vision. The intercom buzzed with a call from our newest client, a major corporation seeking sustainable packaging for their entire product line. Another opportunity to prove that ethical business practices weren't just morally right, they were financially successful. Sarah had tried to destroy us through greed and betrayal. Instead, she'd taught us exactly what kind of company we never wanted to become, and in doing so, had helped us become exactly the kind of company the world needed. Standing at the podium of our annual shareholders meeting 12 months after Sarah's arrest, I looked out at a room filled with employees, investors, and industry leaders who had gathered to witness something unprecedented in corporate America, a company that had grown stronger by choosing principles over profit. The past year had been a masterclass in sustainable business growth. Our revenue had doubled, Our workforce had expanded by 40%, with every new hire carefully selected for both competence and character. Most importantly, we'd proven that treating people with dignity and respect wasn't just the right thing to do, it was the most effective business strategy possible. When I became CEO 13 months ago, many industry experts predicted that our values-based approach would make us uncompetitive in today's marketplace. They were wrong. The presentation screen displayed our achievements: record profits, industry-leading employee satisfaction, unprecedented client retention, and recognition as one of America's most ethical companies. We didn't achieve these results by cutting corners or exploiting workers. We achieved them by investing in people and building relationships based on mutual trust and respect. Margaret and Robert sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Their decision to support merit over family blood had saved not just the company, but the entire Hartwell legacy. Dr. Williams had prepared a comprehensive analysis of our transformation. Hartwell Industries has become a case study in Harvard Business School curricula, she announced. Students around the world are learning how ethical leadership drives sustainable success. The profit-sharing program had distributed over $2 million to employees over the past 12 months. Assembly line workers had received bonuses larger than their base salaries. Administrative staff had been able to pay off student loans and put down payments on homes. The scholarship fund had expanded to support 50 college-bound students annually. But our success isn't measured only in financial terms, I continued. We've created a workplace where people want to build careers, not just collect paychecks. Employee testimonials filled the screen. Linda Rodriguez had completed her MBA and was spearheading our expansion into renewable energy packaging. Marcus Chen had patented 3 manufacturing innovations that were being adopted industry-wide. Dozens of employees had advanced their education, started families, and achieved personal goals with company support. Jennifer Kim presented our sustainability report. 0 workplace accidents for 365 consecutive days. Employee turnover rate of less than 2%, compared to industry average of 28%. Client complaints down 94% from 3 years ago. The transformation extended beyond our company walls. Local newspapers had featured stories about our economic impact on the community. The jobs we'd created had revitalized neighborhoods. Our community investment program had funded youth centers, literacy programs, and small business development initiatives. Michael Torres announced our international expansion. 3 European companies have requested licensing agreements to implement our business model in their markets. We're not just succeeding in America, we're exporting American values of fairness and opportunity. But the most powerful validation came from our clients. CEOs of major corporations had traveled to Chicago, specifically to tour our facilities and understand our approach. Order requests exceeded our production capacity, forcing us to carefully select partnerships with companies that shared our values. What began as a crisis of leadership has become a revolution in how business can serve society, I said as the presentation concluded. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Employees, investors, and visitors recognized that they were witnessing something rare, a company that had chosen to be better rather than just bigger. During the question and answer session, a business journalist asked about Sarah's impact on our success. Sarah's actions taught us exactly who we didn't want to be, I replied. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most painful experiences. Her betrayal forced us to examine our values and commit to principles that made us stronger. A young MBA student raised her hand. Do you think other companies can replicate your model? I believe any company can choose to prioritize people over profits. It requires courage and long-term thinking, but the results speak for themselves. When you treat employees, clients, and communities with genuine respect, they respond with loyalty and commitment that no amount of money can buy. After the meeting, David and I walked through the factory floor where our expansion was creating new jobs daily. Workers greeted us by name, sharing stories about their families and career aspirations. These weren't just employees, they were partners in building something meaningful. "Do you ever regret how everything happened?" David asked, as we watched Linda Rodriguez training a new team of engineers. "I regret the pain it caused your parents," I said. "But I don't regret learning who Sarah really was before she could cause even more damage." Margaret approached us with tears in her eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Kristen, I need to tell you something. Robert and I have decided to transfer our remaining shares to you. You've earned complete ownership of what you've built. I can't accept that. This is your family legacy." "No," Robert said, joining our conversation. "This is your legacy now. You've created something better than we ever imagined possible." That evening, as I reviewed the stack of business cards from executives who wanted to learn about our model, I realized that Sarah's attempted destruction had actually launched a movement. Companies across America were beginning to question whether maximizing shareholder value was worth destroying human dignity. The local news featured a segment about our impact on the community. Unemployed workers who'd found good jobs, families who'd achieved stability, young people who saw education as an investment in their futures rather than an impossible dream. Sarah remained in federal prison, serving her 3-year sentence. She'd become a cautionary tale about the consequences of choosing greed over integrity. But her story had also become part of our success story, a reminder that character matters more than credentials, and that true leadership means serving others rather than exploiting them. As I turned off the lights in my office and headed home to David, I understood that the greatest victory wasn't our financial success or industry recognition. It was the knowledge that hundreds of people went to work each day at a place where they were valued, respected, and given opportunities to grow. Sarah had tried to destroy us through betrayal and greed. Instead, she'd taught us that building something meaningful requires exactly the opposite: loyalty, generosity, and an unwavering commitment to treating people as they deserve to be treated. The Hartwell Industries story had become more than a business success. It had become proof that American capitalism could serve American values, and that the choice between profit and principles was a false choice for leaders with the courage to pursue both. 2 years have passed since that devastating inauguration night when Sarah tried to destroy everything our family had built. As I write this final chapter of our story, I'm sitting in the same conference room where the board voted to make me CEO, but everything else has changed in ways I never could have imagined. Hartwell Industries has become more than a company. We've become a model for how business can serve as a force for good in the world. The Harvard Business Review case study that featured our transformation has been downloaded over 1 million times by business students and executives seeking to understand how ethical leadership drives sustainable success. Our employee count has tripled to over 800 people, each one carefully selected for their character as well as their competence. The profit-sharing program has distributed over $12 million to workers over the past 24 months, enabling dozens of families to buy homes, send children to college, and achieve the American dream through honest work and fair compensation. The scholarship fund has grown beyond our wildest expectations. We now support 150 college students annually, with graduates returning to work for us or starting their own businesses using the values they learned here. Linda Rodriguez completed her PhD and now serves as our Chief Innovation Officer, leading breakthrough research in biodegradable packaging materials that could revolutionize the industry. Marcus Chen opened our West Coast facility, bringing the Hartwell model to California and creating 300 new jobs in communities that desperately needed economic opportunity. His manufacturing innovations have been adopted by companies across America, proving that efficiency and worker safety aren't competing goals, they're complementary strategies. Dr. Williams recently announced that Northwestern University's business school would establish the Hartwell Center for Ethical Leadership, funded by our company's charitable foundation. Future business leaders will study how companies can prioritize both profitability and human dignity, using our transformation as proof that such balance is not only possible but profitable. Margaret and Robert have found their retirement years filled with purpose and pride. They travel frequently, but always return to witness the continued growth of what they started 50 years ago. Their decision to choose character over blood relations saved not just our company, but created a legacy that will impact generations of workers and their families. "You've built something we never dreamed possible," Robert told me during last month's board meeting. "This isn't just a business anymore, it's a movement." David has become a nationally recognized expert in sustainable business practices, speaking at conferences and consulting with companies that want to implement our model. His environmental law practice has expanded to serve clients across the Midwest, all seeking to align their operations with principles of environmental and social responsibility. But perhaps the most meaningful validation comes from our employees themselves. Last month, we celebrated our 1,000th consecutive day without a workplace accident. More importantly, we celebrated our 2nd anniversary without a single employee choosing to leave for another job. When people find a workplace that treats them with dignity and offers genuine opportunities for growth, they tend to stay. The ripple effects of our success extend far beyond our company walls. Local unemployment has dropped to historic lows as other businesses adopt similar values-based approaches to hiring and employee relations. The community college has expanded its programs to prepare workers for the kinds of jobs we're creating. Young people who once left Chicago, seeking opportunities in other cities, are now returning to build careers here. Meanwhile, Sarah completed her prison sentence 6 months ago. She was released to a halfway house in Milwaukee, where she's required to work in food service while completing community service hours. The federal restitution agreement means she'll be paying back stolen funds for the next 15 years, and her criminal record makes employment in financial services impossible. I've had no contact with Sarah since her arrest, but David occasionally receives updates through family friends. She's apparently working as a cashier at a grocery store, living in a small apartment, and struggling to rebuild her life after destroying it so completely. Part of me feels sympathy for the waste of her potential, but I've learned that some people choose paths that lead inevitably to their own destruction. The business world continues to take notice of our success. 6 major universities have requested permission to study our operations for their business school curricula. 2 best-selling business books have featured chapters about our transformation. Most significantly, Congress is considering legislation that would provide tax incentives for companies that meet certain standards for employee profit sharing and community investment. "We're not just running a successful business," Jennifer Kim observed during our recent strategic planning retreat. "We're proving that capitalism can work for everyone when it's guided by conscience rather than greed." The international expansion Michael Torres predicted has exceeded all expectations. Companies in 12 countries have licensed our business model, creating thousands of jobs and improving working conditions for people around the world. The Hartwell approach is spreading because it works not just financially, but morally. As I prepare for tomorrow's groundbreaking ceremony for our new research and development center, I reflect on the journey that brought us here. What began as a devastating betrayal became the catalyst for creating something better than anyone imagined possible. The new facility will employ 200 research scientists and engineers, focusing on sustainable packaging solutions that could help address climate change while creating good jobs for skilled workers. The partnership with 3 major universities will provide internships and career paths for students from all economic backgrounds. Sarah's attempt to destroy our family business through greed and betrayal ultimately taught us the most valuable lesson of all. True success comes from building something larger than yourself, something that serves others and creates lasting value for society. Her destructive choices revealed the stark contrast between leadership that serves others and leadership that serves only itself. Tonight, as I walk through our facilities and see the lights still on in offices where dedicated employees are working on projects they believe in, I understand that we've achieved something rare in American business. We've proven that treating people with dignity isn't just morally right, it's the most effective strategy for building sustainable success. The Hartwell Industries story continues to evolve, but its central message remains clear. When you choose integrity over expedience, when you invest in people rather than exploit them, when you build relationships based on trust rather than fear, you create something that can't be destroyed by external forces because it's strengthened by internal values. Sarah thought family meant blood relations and inherited privilege. She was wrong. Family means the people who stand with you, who share your values, who work together toward common goals even when the path is difficult. By that definition, Hartwell Industries has become home to the largest, most successful family in Chicago. What started as a story of betrayal and greed became a story of resilience and growth. What began with one person's attempt to destroy became hundreds of people's determination to build. And what Sarah intended as the end of our story became the beginning of something much more meaningful than she could have imagined. The lesson I've learned through this journey is one I hope resonates with anyone facing betrayal, injustice, or seemingly impossible challenges. Your character is revealed not by the actions others take against you, but by how you respond to those actions. When someone tries to destroy what you've built, you have a choice. You can become bitter and defensive, or you can become better and stronger. We chose to become better, and that choice made all the difference. I'd love to hear about your own experiences with workplace challenges or family business dynamics. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you handle situations where doing the right thing seemed to conflict with immediate self-interest? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else who's facing similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others discover it. Subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, integrity, and the power of choosing principles over profit. And please share this with anyone who might benefit from learning that ethical leadership isn't just possible, it's profitable. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember that every challenge you face is an opportunity to demonstrate your character, and every choice you make shapes not just your own future, but the future of everyone whose life you touch. Choose wisely, act with integrity, and never underestimate the power of treating others with the dignity they deserve.